Well, we'll see if this works. So I'm hopeful that everyone will be able to hear this who are on the video. We've entitled this program, Becoming St. Francis. And it is my intent through the weeks of our Lenten study to look backwards at first so we'll know where we are going. So this week we're going to look at our church and our diocese, kind of how we came to be in this building. Next week we're going to look at the island as a whole, kind of what's going on the island, the history of the island, how that informs who we are as people of God here on this island, worshiping God and proclaiming the good news to all people. The next week we will talk about, all right, how are we the church? Well, I'll probably slip into that some today. But it's how do we worship together? Bringing all sorts of things to the table, all sorts of different backgrounds from which you all come, and comfort zones in how you worship. And how do we bring that all together in one cohesive unit? And then that last Sunday of this part, Wednesday of this part of the program will be when we kind of dream, probably a decade or so in the future when hopefully we're building a new building. And what are the kind of things we want to incorporate? We were kind of talking a little just before everybody was arriving about the natural lighting coming to this and how nice and bright this is. And as opposed to, say, a Gothic church that I think by definition is dark and dank. That's probably something we want to incorporate in our next church. So those are the kind of things we'll do some design brainstorming that day. So that'll, I think it'll be fun, really fun to do that. So we got to look backwards to figure out where we're going. I truly, truly believe. There's a book called Generation to Generation, Family Process in Churches and Synagogues by Edwin Friedman. There's a similar book about families and family systems. And his premise is that a church is just like a family. And you have a certain way you do things, and you have a system. You are in a system, whether you know it or not. And when somebody new comes in through the door, more than likely, they're either going to have to adapt to the system or disrupt the system. Right? The system needs to make room for them, or the system will push them back out of the doors. And we need to be purposeful. We're new. We're in our infant stage. We can control our DNA. I think that more than anything else was the most exciting to me and why I'm here at the Episcopal Church on Edison, or St. Francis, whatever we're going to call ourselves, is because we can purposefully decide how we want to be as a church. Look, that DNA. We can make those choices with our eyes wide open. So going back to the family systems, how many of you all have ever seen The Lion King?
Seen what?
The Lion King. One of my absolutely favorite movies, Disney movie. Opening scene, the lion Scar is about to pounce on the bird. I think the bird's name is Zazu or something like that, and he's about to eat the bird, and then the Lion King, Mufasa, comes in and says, "Scar, don't you know it's not good to play with your food?" They go back and forth. Scar sulks away. And Zazu and the Lion King are saying, they're talking amongst themselves, and says, every time there's a family reunion, somebody comes and just, there's always that one person in the family who comes and disrupts everything. And that's true, isn't it? And I'll say, if it's not true, I bet it's you. You might have to check that one out, because I know it's true for every family. And Zazu, the bird, he says, well, mine has two. And that's true too sometimes. So that's the kind of stuff that I want us to look at a little bit, is that those family systems that we have all brought with us from wherever we come. One of the things things I do, and this is a lot like marriage counseling, but one of the things I do in marriage counseling is show these two who are going to join together and become one, that they're bringing a lot to the table that they don't realize. Right? So we sit down and we talk about their blind spots, the things they know. We talk about family systems. Because, know it or not, they like doing things a certain way because of the way that they were brought up in their family. Now, they may be rejecting their family, or they could be embracing their family, but it's in direct response to the way they were in their family. We do the same thing with our church. We do the same thing with the way we want to worship in a church. Sharon and I, I forget what it was for, we decided we were going to learn to dance. And we took dance classes, and we tried to learn the shag. I mean, I've got 2 left feet, and she always wants to lead, so it never really went well. But what I do remember, we were there 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you're going back. Anyway, we have our own dance. Every family has their own dance. And we know the rhythm, we know the steps. Right? That's our default position in a family system, in a church system, in any of those sort of systems. And so we have that. We have our dance here at the Episcopal Church on Addiston. And so looking backwards, we're going to be able to identify some of those things that have influenced our dance. And when we identify those things from the diocese, from the churches that we come from, the way we grew up, and when we identify those things also from the island, the way this island is, and the way the island grew up, we can then make informed decisions of what we do want to do and what we don't want to do as we grow up as a church. So that's ultimately my goal here, is to identify those things that we've done, the DNA that's already getting implanted within us, and how we may or may not change. So I'm going to stay with that marriage analogy for a minute. What do you imagine are the main things that I'm talking with a couple that's getting ready to get married? What do you think we're talking about in that scenario? You can say it.
Money.
Money? Yep.
Power.
Well, money is power. So money often equaling power, and how you use money. Your family. You know, you can't choose them. They come with you, good or bad, your family. And with that, there's a sub-bullet point. There's those big vacation times like Christmas and Thanksgiving. Ooh, it gets heated there. What do you mean we're not going to mom's house? Of course we're going to mom. No, we've always gone to my mom's house. Wow, I mean, so there's a big fight, you know, the first fight. Where do we go for Christmas? Right? Thanksgiving as well. Some families would rather do Thanksgiving than Christmas. And, you know, there's some people have it figured out, some don't. And I would call that for most of those couples, their happy place. It may not be perfect, but they may be thinking of the perfect example of all those Thanksgivings conflated together. You know, it's their ideal perfect, and that really drives a lot of the discussion. And then how do we disagree? How do we fight? That's one of the things. That's one of the chapters that we do. We spend a whole day on fighting fair. We always say fighting's important. Because if you're not fighting, that means you don't care enough to fight for something. Fighting's important, but fighting fair is even more important. All of you who are married, you know, there's that one thing you can't say, because that person has been so vulnerable to you over time that to pull that out as a tool or a weapon in a fight has gone across the line that you can't ever cross. So how do we fight fair? And then the last one for at least married couples is sex. Well, we better not be talking about that here in this context. All right, the church. When we talk about church, money. Again, it's power, It can be used as power within the church, but it also can be used, I've seen both. Some people just give money over with no control and say, to the glory of God, do with it what you need to do. I trust you. Honestly, that's where we want to get everybody. But it also, the other side of that is that the church needs to prove that they're trustworthy, that they're good and faithful with that money. But using the money as I don't like what you're doing this week. I'm not going to give you what I pledged. Well, that's bad form, bad DNA, so to speak. If you're that upset about something, maybe this isn't the right church for you. Right? That might be the discussion that needs to happen. All right. Then what we know as church, again, like Thanksgiving or Christmas, I call this our happy place. And often it's not a reality, this happy place. This happy place is usually something in the past. It's usually something that when you were coming along, this was when you became alive in your faith. Maybe it's when you were a child, the way you remember church being when you as a child, you don't get to see all the dark places because you're a child. There's a lot of things going on that you're unaware of. But for good or for bad, we come into this with our idea of a happy place. And this manifests itself at my last church as, well, you remember when all the classrooms were full of kids, right? Mm-hmm. And this was a church that no longer existed that way. That was the 1950s when everybody came to church and it was a social center of everything. And as much as we pined away over that church was not coming back. But that church spent all its time and all its resources and all its energy spinning its wheels trying to redo something that doesn't exist anymore. So that's something that we also bring into it. And we could have that, whatever that idea, it could be music, it could be the way we do liturgy, it could be the way we pray, the way we do as a church, to something that felt really good to us when we were being formed, but doesn't match our reality here today. And so those are things that we need to look at. And just like in a marriage, how do we disagree? How do we have conversations that honors what you're saying and yet honors what we think? And come together, trust the leadership to move forward in whatever way that looks like. And if you look at the history of this church was started because Trinity, whatever it was it Episcopal Church when y'all left it?
Yeah.
It was still the Episcopal Church?
Yes, it was.
It had the sign up there, but it had disbanded from the church.
Right, so Trinity, whatever.
Yeah.
We could not in good conscience keep going that way. So we had to be honest with ourselves and say, well, we are staying with the Episcopal Church, and we don't know what that looks like, and it might not have much of a future here on Madison Island, but it definitely has no future over here. So we're staying over here, we're making a choice, and we're going to do that. So that's how we disagree in a mature way. In a not so mature way, we may scream and yell and throw things, and none of which is ever productive in a conversation. And if we are trying to reason with somebody who's unreasonable, it's never, has that ever worked? It probably has not. It probably has not. I'm curious, with all that as just a little bit of groundwork, what do we want our systems to look like here at St. Francis? And when I think of systems, I'm also thinking, what do we want our legacy to be? When somebody remembers their sweet spot, their happy spot 10 years from now, and we look back at this time as we're forming, what do we want that picture to look like?
Open hearts.
Open hearts.
Accepting others.
Accept. I'm going to repeat what you say so hopefully people will be able to hear it on the video. Accepting.
You want people to feel loved when they come in.
loved, no
Loved,
matter
loved.
what.
Because that's a big part of things.
Yeah.
Welcome is another word.
Welcoming. I want them, as your spiritual leader, to be hungry for the good news of Jesus Christ and be so impacted by that that they leave these doors ready to spread that news, be it verbally or with their actions or that component of being so inspired that we've got to leave these doors and the walls. Bob, yeah.
To be open.
Open. Tell me what you mean.
There are where we are as far as in our lives age, as I look around and have been here and realize, is that what you have been saying to this point has an awful lot of personal history and interrelated history and so on. And it also leads to where we tend to be closed. And it's maybe through our children, grandchildren, and people that challenge us. Let me show you how that works on that iPhone. When in fact we've given up to dealing with it and so on. And so being open to allow those voices to reach us and think about something that we have not thought about, and we're willing to humble ourselves to that experience.
Very good. Yes. So be open to. A lot of times in leadership, when we have a position of leadership in a church, that looks like stepping back so that somebody else can come do it. So often, we're people. We got control issues, y'all. And for it to be done right, it's got to be done our way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to allow somebody to do it a different way is really taking a chance, whatever it is. You know, be it altar guild, be it coming up and reading, be it acolyting, be it building a deck on somebody's house, allowing somebody to step into that system. I saw a hand over here somewhere.
I think it was a bishop in Georgia that said that our church should be a hospital for sinners and not a museum for saints.
Oh, very good.
I love that.
And I always like that because I think some people think I can't go to church because I'm not perfect, and I'm like, none of us are perfect.
There is a great video. It's on being a welcoming church, and I think it's done in an ecumenical way. I don't think it was Episcopal Church, and it was a series of vignettes of why somebody doesn't feel like they can go to church, and it was a young person who said, if you really knew me and you knew my sins, you wouldn't want me around to that extent. And this was a man, his response, and again, this is a video, but he's a veteran. He'd been to war, he's seen war. He said, if you'd known where I've been, if you'd known my sins, you'd understand that we need to be here together. That sort of thing. It was so powerful. I didn't do it justice there, but it was that other voice saying that there's room for more sinners here, because that's what we got. I mean, this building is for sinners. And so is that one and all the other churches. And the impression is out in the world is you got to be good to come here. Well, no, this is for sinners. We're all working on getting better, just like you said. Any of those other things? What do you want folks to be able to see? Our legacy. All right, so I'm going to back up a little bit. I had to get helps for this because I don't know this diocese as well. So I at least want to look at our diocese, the Diocese of South Carolina, the Episcopal Diocese of South Carolina. Although their website says diocese. What is that something lost in the legal fight? It just says the Diocese of South Carolina.
That's the right way.
And then it says the Episcopal Church. And so,
But then it has there's the long name about Protestant, blah, blah, blah.
okay. So if we look at just a timeline, it was formed in 1783. It encompassed all of South Carolina. It was not until, I think, 1922 that it was actually divided up. South Carolina was the upper diocese of South Carolina, and those of us, I grew up in the upper diocese. I like to say the lower diocese, which, of course, now that I'm here, we're the diocese. But in 1921 and 22, Bishop Kirkland Finley was a bishop coadjutor and of that diocese, and so he became the first bishop of Upper South Carolina when the two separated. And things just kind of, church happened. Church became church until around 2006. It was actually things were happening below the surface and bubbling up even before then. But 2003 to 2006 is when the issues the church was the whole Episcopal Church was wrestling with issues over homosexuality. And 2006, Bishop Mark Lawrence was elected to this as a bishop of this diocese, and really it appears as though on paper that his intent all the time was to lead the diocese out of the church. That's what it looks like when you do a post-mortem on it. In October of, was it 2012 or 2013?
2012 and then 2013, it,
what is by 2012?
October, there we go, I got a whole nother page.
Oh,
There we go, now it's starting to make sense. October 2012, the Disciplinary Board of the Episcopal Church issues a certificate of abandonment to that said bishop. There was all sorts of little political maneuvers that he had been doing up to that point. He was changing the charter. He was issuing quick claims about property, which is how a lot of people lost their property, like us. And I guess some people couldn't fill out the paperwork properly, and they didn't lose their property. So always fill out your paperwork properly. If we don't learn anything else, we'll learn that. November 17, 2012, a special meeting of parish leaders who supported breaking away from the Episcopal Church. December 2012, presiding bishop announces she has accepted Bishop Lawrence's renunciation of ordination. Now at that point, I'm asking you two because y'all were there. Did you feel like, had y'all already left?
no,
So you were still at Trinity at that time?
we were on the vestry, Pat and I were
We were on the vestry, yes, and so.
blindsided.
Okay.
I was.
Blindsided. He called, the rector over there, called a meeting,
Emergency meeting.
emergency meeting on a Sunday after church, and had us come in the room and decide whether because the vestry had to vote on whether to leave the Episcopal Church and make it official.
That seems highly irregular.
It was.
It was very irregular, but before that, the church had met. Remember that we had a congregational meeting and most of the people voted to leave, but it wasn't official until we sat in the room, and we had a good 2-hour meeting, don't you think? Yeah.
So bylaws help govern these things, and so every bylaw I've ever seen says, all right, you have to give the vestry 2 weeks' notice. They need to know what's on the agenda, and you can only discuss the things that are on that agenda to prevent something like that from
That
happening.
one said 48 hours. 'Cause I remember it wasn't
Clearly,
even
clearly,
48
people have been
hours.
changing their bylaws to do this little political maneuver. Good news, bad news of the story is the diocese did split. A handful of how many people?
About 30.
About
35.
30, 35.
35.
First church service was at Jim Getty's house, or was it at Gretchen's house?
Joanne said it was at her. Joanne, God rest her soul, said it was at her house.
We'll have a lot of people who claim that.
It might be over there in the red book.
And it might be in the red book.
You want me to go look?
No, it's in my office.
Well, there you go.
There you go. So, people, as I understand it, would take turns having services at their house, in a fairly small group. Eventually and quickly, they outgrew that, started meeting in the barbecue joint, right? So they're meeting in the barbecue place, and why did that come to an end?
We started smelling like barbecue. Well, I think what happened then was we met at Bobo's, very gracious person, for, I don't know, 2 or 3 months. I remember that Bishop Charlie came out there and did a service for us. And we actually remember walking around in the restaurant on Palm Sunday, waving some palms. But Bob King and Gretchen had both spoken with Reverend Morrison about using this church for an Easter Sunday service.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, yes, let me think about it. He said, he came back, he said yes, or pray on it rather. And then he said, but don't ask me about renting it. And then I think it was about a week later he came to
Well,
one.
we had asked all the churches on the island first.
Oh yeah, we did, the Methodist church, I don't think we did. We asked you because we knew this one was empty.
We asked others too,
If we could worship in their church.
when they weren't using it.
Oh, yes, we did. We asked Catholic Church, they said no. The Methodist Church, we had a meeting in their recreation hall, social hall, whatever. And the people in the congregation got mad that the church had elders or whatever Methodists are, and I should know that and I don't, had taken sides between these two churches.
Ooh, okay.
And it was pretty ugly there in the
Mhm.
beginning, but Reverend Morrison asked Bob, I think, do y'all want to rent the church? Yeah.
Well,
Here we are.
And what a blessing for us.
Absolutely.
He and
And
Bob worked together,
They knew each
He
other.
and
They knew each
Bob.
other.
gotcha.
professionally worked together.
Okay. So it was, to say the least, a difficult time, an interesting time, and was it a general feeling of hopefulness, hopelessness?
No, never, I never felt hopeless.
I didn't either. You felt free. You were free of, I did, of chains
Black
or
flag.
whatever was over there. We felt free, actually felt free to practice our religion as Episcopalians,
Okay.
not as whatever that was.
Right, so free to worship God in what you know as the Episcopal expression of that faith, as our presiding bishop says, the Episcopal branch of the Jesus movement.
Oh, that's nice.
And I will say that every church has their own way of doing this. And we can be what I call, do you know what I'm talking about when I say a low church?
Yeah.
We're kind of a low church, aren't we?
We don't, are we?
Yeah.
Yes.
We don't even have kneelers.
Okay. So that would be a yes. We are a low church. And as opposed to a high church. This is a more Anglo-Catholic expression of this faith. And I call it smells and bells. And you really do have incense and you have bells that ring. We even talked about the bells in our worship committee meeting. Do we want to do that? And we talked about the history of why there are bells, and it seemed to jive with our sensibility that, well, maybe we'll try that. But it's really important to know why you're doing what you do, so that it's just not something that we do with no theology behind it. Why do we cross ourselves? Some may know, some may do it because they're doing it. You don't want to look out of place, right? All these decisions, I think, we'll look at and wrestle with a little bit. I'm gonna, yeah.
A question, because I grew up in the diocese of Upper South Carolina, not North Carolina, so I'm not familiar with the problems that happen here. I'm aware of the problems, and you just mentioned one of them. The question I have for the folks, who are from here and who grew up with Lenten or Trinity, was there a tipping point? I assume that there had been some discussion and conversation and disharmony at Trinity. What were the events that led up to we have a decision to make, let's leave or stay?
You talking about us or
Yeah.
Trinity leaving the Episcopal Church?
I guess it'd be both. what caused this divide?
So and I won't answer it, and you can give your spin on it. So it's a theological divide. So it's the primacy of Scripture, the way we look with and deal with Scripture. That, not Trinity itself, but the whole diocese pulled out at the same time. There also were and still are wrestling with women's ordination. So those are two big theological things. But then behind the scenes, leading up to that point, were a whole bunch of political, changing of the canons and Constitution, changing of bylaws, giving those quick, all preparing themselves for taking the entire diocese and moving in a different direction, not remaining in the Episcopal Church. And that's what ended up happening in October, November, December of 2012.
We had, on theological differences, is a big level of control. This was another thing that had happened over there. Education for Ministry program. I guess you came in, or Mary Ann came in to talk about it. Came in to talk about starting one over at Trinity. Suzanne and my friend Mary Ann Foy had been going to an Education for Ministry program in Charleston religiously every Monday, wasn't it? And so Mary Ann wanted, when they finished, they wanted to start one over there. And so Mary Ann came in and gave a presentation. We were all sitting there, and I was on the vestry at that point. And you could see that there was movement like, this sounds like a good, even within Conrad and Zimmerman in particular. I remember there was movement, Way could feel it, that people were thinking, well, this would be okay if we have an Education for Ministry class over here, a seminar. And this priest sitting on the couch pitched a hissy fit. He pitched a hissy fit. Oh no, we can't do this. Our Father Lawrence wouldn't like it, on and on and on, until he converted the rest of the, except for Suzanne and I, converted the rest of the vestry to vote against that EFM program.
Well, he once said, "Oh, fine, as long as I can attend each meeting."
But he wanted to control. He wanted to control the way we thought, and that was one time. It was really quite evident that why was this such a threatening program, especially to him and other people that are in the diocese, whichever one, the Anglican diocese, not yet at that point, and that was an eye opener for me right there.
So how do Episcopalians, I mean, when we approach a big theological debate, discussion, how do we look at a problem like that? As Episcopalians, we're supposed to look at it in the three-legged stool: Scripture, tradition, and reason. And it's the group of us using Scripture, tradition, and reason. It's not, one person controlling the conversation. It doesn't mean that we're all gonna agree on the same thing. In fact, I swear every time it feels like none of us agree, which is probably the reason why it's the way forward, is because we've all had to give something up. We've all had to compromise a little bit. So that's a little bit about how we got here to this building. This is the building. So what makes up a church?
People.
Thank you. All of you are coming in with your own history. Now, I'm going to turn the tables on you a little bit, because you are also part of the story. You are part of the tapestry, coming in and worshiping here at St. Francis Episcopal Church. And so I'm trying to think who's ready to go first, because I really would love all of you to have a chance, but somebody's got to be first. Tell me about what it was like, either growing up or the happiest memory you have at a church that wasn't this church. What do you consider a forming, be it this denomination, another denomination, it doesn't really matter. But it's something that you bring with you and you carry forward into this room. Here we go. Then I am just gonna
For me, the excitement of this parish
It's hot.
was my childhood church was St. Francis in the Fields in Louisville.
Really?
And the building was just like this, broken glass windows. It was a young baby church, and the excitement was there, and when I walked in this door, I felt that same excitement, and it thrilled me no end.
So what are you bringing with you, adding to that DNA?
I'm bringing 75 years of church history.
Well, there we go. Someone else. All right, say your name. Let me get the camera on you. That's all right. You're a star.
Okay. I'm Gary Cantrell, and I grew up Southern Baptist, and well after we got married in the Episcopal Church, my mother still had the church sending me my bulletin, hoping I'd convert back, you know. But, you know, I think she still prayed for me to go back to baptism, or back to Baptist church, you know, until she died. But anyway, Carl and I were dating, and I went to church with her, to the Episcopal Church in Panopolis. And so they had, like, my second Sunday, they was having the spring picnic, and after church, we went down to the lake where all the boats were. We were gonna be skiing and stuff. Went down the line to get my hamburger, my hot dog. I went into the ice chest, got myself a Coca-Cola. It was full of beer. And I said, this is the church for me. And when you serve beer, because Baptists, we had to drink and go to another town to get our beer and liquor. You couldn't get it in the local place. So I said, well, this is the church for me.
I don't think anybody's gonna top that. But we're not trying to top that. I want to hear your stories. This is part of today. All right, here we go. Olivia.
Thank you. I'm Olivia Patchett. I grew up in a Lutheran church. During my marriage, I was a Methodist. I did not like the simplicity of their service. I missed the liturgy and the ritual of the Lutheran church. And so when I moved to Eddystone, I thought I would join Trinity. Well, life took me in another direction for a few years, and I was invited to come and join this church. So that's how I got here, and I like it very much.
So you said invited. So you came after the split.
Yes, I don't have a dog in that fight.
So who here came afterwards? Maybe I should. Who came before? I mean, with the split, just you two. You two, y'all are okay.
Well,
Who were here?
We were
Dean washed dishes. I don't know that he went to
Both
church.
Me and Suzanne were dishwashers together.
Okay.
Yeah.
My point is, most of us know about that history, but most of us came after that history. And that's important. I mean, it's huge in the life of this church, and yet not huge in the life of everybody in this room. Thank you. We got one here, Helen.
I'm Helen Scotch, and I was raised Catholic, but I've been in and out of the Catholic Church most all of my life because I struggle with the exclusiveness of the way we do church. We talk about welcoming, but we're very limiting in how we see things, whether it's women or it's gays or it's how we look at premarital sex, whatever it is. I mean, all of it. And so when I came here and heard the story of the church here, I said, that's my kind of place. Because we're not battling about who worships with us. Maybe we're battling for ourselves with how we become better at worship. And so that's why I'm here.
Beautifully said. Let me get out the way.
Jeff Watson, and I was, my father was a Presbyterian and my mother was a Methodist. My grandfather was a Methodist minister. So my mother and my father remarried an Episcopalian. And I used to get car sick on the way to church in Utica, New York, every single Sunday. So they said, how about we go to the Episcopal church in the town where we live, closer. So that's how I became an Episcopalian. Roundabout, with some various backgrounds. I have been living in Vermont since I went to college. Vermont is a very, very liberal state. We had, I went to a church, an Episcopal church with an Episcopal minister forever, for the last 30 or 40 years. We now have a female bishop in the state of Vermont. We welcome everybody, homosexuals, women for sure, in the church. When we came down here, we'd been camping here for years, and we didn't know anybody, but we knew the area, and I really wanted to come to church. I had been to Trinity a few times and always felt a little uncomfortable, but I never really knew why. So one brave Sunday, I decided to come to this church, having no idea what I was walking into, and I felt immediately comfortable. Nancy Scarton took me under her wing. I asked her, I said, what's the difference between these two churches? And 45 minutes later, I had the story, and the Scartons in particular really took us under their wing and just welcomed us and got us to go to the foyer dinners, and that's where I met Suzanne, and all these different times, but a real sense of community here, which has been very important to us. And my husband, for the first time in 37 years of marriage, started going to church with me. That says something.
I would like to add to that. You had a mentor. You had somebody who brought you in, looked out for you, told you the story, and encouraged you as you went along. About the first day I was here, the Scardins left. May have been something I said. Might not have been. But they're not here. But you are. And it's going to be our job as parishioners to identify those who are coming in who may need a shepherd, to tell you our story, to tell you what it means what are we doing in this building and why we're doing it. We're having the pet blessing. That means when we use insider language, that we all know what we're talking about, but somebody who just walked in the door has no clue. Somebody to translate for them. So we need to remember that. We need to be very deliberate about being that person for other people. It makes a huge difference. Yes. Let's find you. There we go. Yes, thank you.
I'm Barbara Cavalier. And I grew up Lutheran, and I still remember the Lutheran church. My parents sent me to Sunday school, to confirmation. They didn't do much church attending. Confirmation made the change in my life. That was that I knew that I would never leave going to church, because God really touched me then and things. And this can be a little bit longer. You need to hear, I think, just a little more background. When Dean and I married, we moved to the state of Idaho. I'm originally from Minnesota, and during that time, my whole family joined a cult. And so what I was taught was always wrong. And that's why I want to stay a Lutheran until I die, because because when you're told you're going to go to hell because you won't join a cult, it's a little challenging, and they remain that way throughout their lives. I love them, I did things for them, I was close to them in my own way, but religion we could never talk about. And so then we moved here in 2006, and we did go to Trinity Episcopal because it was the closest to Lutheran that we could come. But I want to add to what you said, Pat, that one Sunday in church was passed out a sheet of paper that said, this is what Trinity, or what the other church, Episcopal, whatever Bishop Lawrence said, that's what we believe in, but this is what the Episcopal church believes in, and it was a chart. And we read through that, and we just looked at each other and said, what they're accusing the Episcopal church looking like is what all the other cultish places and stuff accuse churches of being, and the Episcopal Church isn't like that.
Right.
And things. So then we knew we couldn't stay there, but it happened to be 2012, 2013, and in 2013 I retired from the Citadel, so I didn't have to drive every day. And so we found the Lutheran Church in West Ashland that we decided to go to. And it was good, but then the pandemic hit, and then some things at that church hit too, and we decided no more driving to Charleston, because we're getting older too. So then we knew that this would be the place for us to come, because it is like sisters,
Right.
in so many ways. So and we're here.
We're in communion together.
We are
and,
in communion together, and we are
fully
here,
welcome.
and we are loving it, and we're home.
Very good. Thank you.
All we need is running water.
A little running water would be nice. A bathroom or two would be nice as well. But that kind of goes with the running water. Anyone else? Yes. Let me There we go. The hot mic.
I don't know what that means. I'm Christian Stemkowski. That's
You,
what it
you do
means.
now.
I'm Christian Stemkowski. This is my husband, Steve. We've been married 40 years. And he was raised in the Roman Catholic Church, and I was raised Presbyterian. And he was not comfortable in a Protestant church, any Protestant church at all. And I wasn't comfortable in a Catholic church. And by accident, not by accident, we moved to a small town. We were both city people. Moved to a small town and lived in the historic district. And right around the corner from us, one of the things we noticed is that all the churches in that town had torn down their old buildings and built new buildings, except for one. And that was St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Monroe, North Carolina. And so we went. It was right around the corner. We could walk. It was a lovely little life. And we walked around, and one Sunday, the priest, he was the rector, and his name was Henry Pressler, and I don't know if he's still living or not, but he was preaching on a movie that was very controversial at the time. So my first introduction to the Episcopal Church was where several different denominations were protesting in the streets about a movie called The Last Temptation of Christ. You may remember that. We're all of an age. But I was expecting one thing from him and got something completely different. And that's what taught me about discernment. And I thought, these people and this man have a whole different way of thinking, and they think like I do. And I'd like to come back. So that's how I ended up in the Episcopal Church. How about you?
Well, I won't go into any detail about my disaffection with the Roman Catholic Church, except I think it's deplorable the way more than half the population of the planet is essentially restricted from their ability to worship the same way as men are. I went to Catholic school. I had nuns. I saw how hard they worked. They were treated badly. So we'll stop there. So when we got married, Joseph, you've heard part of the story. We had to meet with the bishop at the Catholic church that I was a member of at the time. And I had to get 3 dispensations from the bishop in order to marry Christian. She says the most nervous that she got was not all of the wedding planning and doing all that stuff, but meeting with Father Burke. So long story short, one of the dispensations was about children, and that the dispensation was that we would see that our children were raised in the Catholic Church, in the Catholic faith, and we were struggling with that. Father Burke, a clever Irish priest, said, well, there's the letter of the law, there's the spirit of the law. He says, make your children aware and provide them the opportunity if they choose to do that, that's sufficient. So we were good with that. The traditions of the Episcopal Church were very, very similar. It didn't feel Protestant. I've had some poor experiences in other Protestant churches. So anyway, we found St. Paul's. We liked it. Henry became a friend of ours, and we still have friends there. And that's why we're Episcopalians. That's why we come here.
So I just heard you use an expression. We found safe walls.
Did I say that?
That's what I thought I heard.
Safe walls? No,
What did you say?
I forgot.
He didn't say safe walls.
Okay. That's the way I heard it. That's why I'm gonna repeat the story. Because I would like to think that as Episcopalians, we provide safe walls for everybody. For your story like that, we're looking for that place where, one, we feel welcome, one, we feel challenged, one where we can fall on our knees and worship. I mean, all those different things that we come to worship with, and we've got to feel safe, vulnerable almost, to be able to come into the space, and which is what we're trying to do here at, I'm conflicted, the Episcopal Church on Edison, St. Francis, wherever we are.
Just go with it.
St. Francis. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. So we're getting towards then the end of what I want to do. Let's do this way. That works better. I won't promise you that all will be this short. We'll probably be an hour with this one. I suspect next week we might be an hour and a half. Probably an hour to an hour and a half for the third one, and that fourth one, expect, I think, maybe it could go 2 hours. I mean, if we get into it and let ourselves. I'm gonna try and limit it though. What I've tried to accomplish here today is to show you where we've come from. And when I say we, I did want to illustrate that the Trinity Church split is something huge in the life of the Episcopal Church on Edisto, and will always be a part of it. It's a scar that makes us who we are. And yet, most of us know it as a history portion of the church. Most of us don't have the physical scars on our bodies like you two do. And just like any physical scar, somebody with those physical scars react a different way to certain things because of what they've been through. And I can guarantee you that you probably caught yourself doing this or that because somebody hit that button that goes all the way back to that spot, and you can't, you know what I mean? It's that we do it in marriages, we do that in any relationship we have. We don't do it on purpose. It just happens. When it might not happen to the rest of us. But everybody brings that with them from a certain point of view. It may be the Roman Church. It may be the Presbyterian Church. It may be the Baptist Church. It's a shame that churches, the place where we go to have the safe walls, often is a place where we get hurt the most.
I'd like to add one more thing.
You may indeed.
Some of you might notice, I'm speaking for myself, but I think it's probably also true of Pat, that we're pushing people. But for 12 years, thereabouts, we didn't have anybody to tell us what to do. We had to do everything ourselves. So we grew up with this church being in charge. And so it's hard for me when you wanna buy a chalice that's silver.
Right.
But I think it's beautiful, even though we have to carry it with us like a child. But,
And I will say, having grown up in the church, I'm used to pushy people. I know them. I know them well. They are often the most passionate. They're the ones who give the most of themselves, of time, talent, and treasure. They have bought into what it is we're doing, and they are afforded the right to be pushy. So, and which all of you are. We have opinions, but we're a family, and we when we disagree, we work things out. I am so thankful for this place. I haven't seen a lot of disagreements. I really haven't. We seem to be getting along. I had the same kind of feeling at St. Christopher's in Spartanburg, but they went through the same kind of thing. You know, they went to a schism, and I took over after the schism as their first vicar. And what was beautiful about that, all the sacred cows were dead. It was all about the main thing. And all the other things that we get ourselves involved in were not as important. And that's a beautiful place to do ministry. So maybe we can keep that in our DNA, to always somehow, you know, keep renewing so that the sacred cows are out to pasture. Any other? I think that's all. Yeah, go ahead. You may.
I will say something nice about Bishop Lawrence. If not for him, I would not have found one of my best friends who lives in Somerville.
Well, there you go. But it does bring people together. I mean, you know, when you're fighting the same fight and you have to get together and you know, figure it out, and you did it.
without that, we would never have that lovely cross presented to us by Walter Edgar.
So it's all those little connections. I am convinced that God is at work. God does not strive for us to have division, but when we choose to have division for whatever reason, God is present, God will be here, and God will be faithful as long as we are faithful. That has always proven true, the best I can tell. So with that being said, let us go forth into the world rejoicing in the power of the Spirit.
Thanks be to God.
Very good. I was just checking if y'all knew it was Lent.